Kyiv, Ukraine, September 17th, 2025. A grey autumn sky frames yet another moment heavy with symbolism as the war-torn capital hosts a visitor from Brussels, European Parliament President Roberta Metsola. Her arrival underscores the European Union's continued political and moral commitment to Ukraine in its struggle against Russia's full-scale invasion, now well into its third year. As her car pulls up before the presidential office, President Volodymyr Zelensky steps forward. With a firm handshake at the entrance, the Ukrainian leader greets Metsola warmly. It is a gesture designed for the cameras, but it carries undeniable weight. Ukraine's embattled president is welcoming one of the European Union's strongest advocates for his nation's cause. The two leaders then walk together beneath a shared umbrella, climbing the slick stone steps toward the official residence. The image is telling. Two figures, side by side, advancing against the drizzle and against the storm of war. In symbolic terms, it is Europe and Ukraine climbing the same staircase, braving the same weather, and moving forward together. Moments later, they pause before a backdrop of flags, the blue and yellow of Ukraine standing tall beside the circle of European stars. In the still frame, the message is unmistakable. Ukraine's future is bound with Europe, its destiny tied to the Union. Inside, Metsola greets members of the Ukrainian delegation. Each handshake is protocol, yes, but also reassurance. These gestures reflect more than courtesy. They are signals of legislative support, a reminder that the European Parliament, the very chamber that first urged Ukraine's candidate status, remains firmly in Kyiv's corner. Zelensky turns once more to his guest, thanking her for the visit, for her advocacy, and for Europe's enduring commitment. His words echo beyond the gilded walls of Kyiv's presidential offices. They are meant for Brussels, for Strasbourg, and for every European capital still debating how much more aid to send, how much longer to stand firm. When Metsola speaks, her tone is measured but resolute. She has long been one of the loudest voices insisting Europe must do more on sanctions, on financial support, on military deliveries. Standing in Kyiv, her message is simple. Europe's resolve is intact. Zelensky responds in kind, his words carrying the gravity of a nation under fire. He speaks of sacrifice, of resilience, and of determination. He ties Ukraine's survival to the very security of the continent, reminding allies that what is at stake is not just territory, but the principle that aggression must not be rewarded. Again, Metsola takes the floor. She frames Ukraine's struggle as one for all of Europe, a defence not just of borders, but of values. Her remarks are designed to echo in the halls of European parliaments where scepticism is growing, where questions about cost and fatigue linger. Finally, Zelensky addresses the meeting itself. Behind closed doors, the discussion inevitably turns to the pressing agenda: financial packages to keep Ukraine's government functioning, military aid to sustain its defences, and the critical question of EU accession. For Zelensky, the timeline is urgent. For Europe, caution persists. Yet today, the very fact of Metsola's presence is its own message. Momentum continues. This encounter in Kyiv is not routine diplomacy. It comes at a pivotal hour. In Brussels, debates rage over the next tranche of funding, billions that could stabilize Ukraine's economy as war drains its reserves. In Washington, the political future of American aid hangs in the balance, injecting uncertainty into Kyiv's long-term planning. That makes Europe's voice and Europe's commitment more vital than ever. For Zelensky, hosting Metsola is both symbolic and strategic. Symbolic because it demonstrates to his own people that Ukraine is not isolated, that allies continue to come to Kyiv even as missiles fall. Strategic because the European Parliament plays a role in shaping political opinion across the continent, pressing reluctant governments to act. Roberta Metsola herself has become a familiar face in Ukraine. From her first visits during the early months of the invasion to her persistent lobbying in Brussels, she has positioned herself as a champion of Kyiv's European future. Her Maltese background, from one of the Union's smaller member states, only sharpens the symbolism. Support for Ukraine transcends size, distance, and national interest. Yet this visit also takes place against a backdrop of weariness. In many European societies, inflation, rising energy bills, and political unrest have fueled doubts about sustaining aid indefinitely. Populist voices question whether Europe can afford to continue bankrolling the war effort. Metsola's arrival in Kyiv is meant as an answer to those doubts. The message is clear. Ukraine's fight is Europe's fight. The war itself rages on. Russian forces remain entrenched in the east, launching constant attacks across the front lines. Air raid sirens still punctuate daily life in Kyiv. Missiles and drones continue to strike infrastructure and residential neighbourhoods. Against this grim reality, Ukraine's reliance on European military and financial support is absolute. Zelensky knows that every visit from a high-ranking ally serves as a tool of diplomacy, a reminder to both his people and to Moscow that Ukraine has not been abandoned. Today's images, the handshake, the umbrella walk, the backdrop of flags, will circulate across European television and social media, reinforcing a message of endurance. The European Parliament itself is not a body that controls tanks or missiles, but it controls narratives. Its resolutions, its debates and its symbolic gestures shape the way member states approach Ukraine. Metsola's presence signals that parliamentarians remain firmly behind Kyiv, even as political winds shift in individual capitals. For Ukraine, this is also about the horizon of membership. Candidate status was a breakthrough. Accession talks, however, remain a long and complex process. Corruption, judicial reform and economic alignment pose immense challenges. Yet by welcoming Metsola, Zelensky underscores his argument that Ukraine is ready, that the war itself is proof of the country's European orientation, and that waiting any longer risks emboldening Moscow. As the day unfolds, analysts note that timing is everything. This meeting comes just weeks before another round of EU budget negotiations, where Ukraine's aid package will once again be debated. It comes amid discussions of security guarantees, whether the EU can provide the kind of long-term assurances that Washington once promised. And it comes as winter approaches, with energy infrastructure still vulnerable to Russian attack. The images of today's encounter are therefore more than ceremony. They are part of a wider chessboard of international politics, where every handshake is a signal, every flag a statement, every word a commitment. For Zelensky, they are weapons of diplomacy no less vital than the artillery on the front lines. For Metsola, they are proof to her colleagues back home that Europe's future is inseparable from Ukraine's. As the cameras are packed away and the delegations retreat to private discussions, the message lingers. Ukraine is still standing, Europe is still watching, and together both insist they are still resisting. From the steps of Kyiv's presidential office to the corridors of the European Parliament, this meeting affirms a partnership forged in crisis, bound by values and tested by war. What unfolded today was not just about courtesy or protocol. It was about survival, solidarity, and a shared vision of Ukraine's place in Europe. In a city scarred by conflict, in a country still under siege, Roberta Metsola's visit serves as both reassurance and reminder. Reassurance that Europe has not turned away. Reminder that Ukraine's struggle is not only about borders, but about the very future of democracy on the continent. And so, as night falls on Kyiv, the images remain vivid. Zelensky and Metsola, shoulder to shoulder, walking the steps under the rain. Two leaders, two flags, one message, that Ukraine's fight continues and Europe's support endures.
I can stand on the hills. Yes. How are you? Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. We went to school together.
How was school? Great.
Great. We saw the beautiful. Hi, Igor. How are you?
Hello, good to see you.
Familiar faces. You are even more familiar.
From the very beginning of the war, thank you very much, Roberta, to you personally.
Shown
The government.
by your civil protection officers.
We didn't have it in peace during peacetime, but we have now in wartime.
You know, you don't find it in every country of the European Union.
Yeah, it's very good, yes. I think not only because of funding or deficit of money,